Welcome everyone to another episode of Thoughts on the Sermon. Today I have with me two lovely young people from the Glenmere High School. Sergey, what were your thoughts on the sermon?
So today, for me, today's sermon was really a blessing, and the speaker said a lot of things. But one of the things that really stood out to me was when he spoke about how the behavior of church people can actually influence and direct or redirect people from or to God. Because I remember when he said that when he went to church, he and his family had to stand to the side because the people didn't want them beside them because they were poor. But and from that I realized that God sent us to be his servants. We are representations of him. And in order for us to be good representations, we have to do what he would do. So Jesus is a person that he doesn't care who you are, what you're going through, or the status that you have. He wants you to be there with him. And as such, we as Christians should behave like that. And we as Christians should invite each and everyone to God, no matter what their status, no matter what their situation. And that's kind of what I took from him today. Just one of the few things, actually.
Okay, amen. So what do you think we as young people can apply from this sermon today in our everyday lives?
Well, for young people, especially me as a person, I took from it that as a young person, as a Christian, a young Christian, I believe that the way I behave should, a matter of inspire others to come to God, because one of the best ways to bring young people to God is to use young people to bring them to God, because a lot of times they look at how you behave or what you're doing and how you present yourself, and they look at it and they say, okay, if that young lady is behaving like that, then they are preaching who a real Christian should be. And I can look up to her and say that yes, she's behaving as how a real Christian should behave, and I can see her as a role model. And in doing such, they will start to follow and take a little time and say, all right, I can do it. If she can do it, I can do it, and I can seek help from her as well. So I will implement this in my daily life to say that I am a representation, I am an image or a replica of God on earth, and as such I should behave that way.
Okay, thank you very much. So now, Ron, all right, what did you learn from this?
It was a real blessing. From the sermon, I learned that it was really helpful to me to understand that the persistence of his mother when he gave his backstory and how he was going through a death situation, basically, his mother was continuously praying for him, even though he was going through a time of struggle when people came up to him wanting to kill him and they pulled the trigger, put the gun to his head, and it just snapped. It was really a blessing to me because I understood that what we as young people, if we have someone to help us, someone who is persistent, always praying for us, being there for us, and continuously helping us to get through our struggles as young people, we can make it through. And it does not matter how far away we are from God. God will always be there to reel us back in, pull us like on a thread, and carry us back in to his glory and in his presence.
Amen. Thank you very much. Great. Okay. So now we have two lovely ladies from the Demby High School, Ramona and Sister Price, who is the guidance counselor at Demby. So let me start, Ramona. What were your thoughts on the sermon?
Okay, for starters, it's my first time in an Adventist church, and let's just say this is the one I'll never ever in a million forget, and it was more than I've expected. The Pastor Arnold, the speech he made about being thrown away, and God has preserved him, his life choices, and yet it was a big wow. And for me, Pastor Arnold and my father to be having the same experience, I was a little drawn by it. So my take on this, it was one that I'll never forget.
Okay, so now how do you think that other young people, what they've taken from the sermon, can go and do it in their everyday life?
Okay, for starters, young people aren't really gravitated to the church because they're saying that it's a lengthy sermon, it's boring, we're just going to sing boring songs, but it's much more than that. It's feeling connected to God and what he has brought people through, the testimonies. So my take on this would be like, instead of just having speeches, let them show them things, bring them with experiences, teach them even how to be closer to God.
Like what the pastor did today, right?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So now, Sister Price, what did you get from the sermon?
All right, so I will start by saying that this sermon was very inspiring and very thought-provoking. It is definitely one that causes us to introspect and reflect on our life. What stood out for me is his testimony about his mother and him, his family going to church and being singled out for wearing an item of clothing that was donated, and how that that discrimination right there just changed their lives completely in a negative way. And the lesson that was brought home is the fact that sometimes the only contact that people will have with Jesus is us. We are the only contact that people will have. So our words, our actions, the choices that we make, everything that we do, sometimes that's the only way that people are introduced to God. So we have to really be careful, because it can either pull people to Christ or push them away from Him. So we really have to be careful.
Thank you very much. So remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see another time in another episode of Thoughts from the Sermon.